It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Solomon and Mr. McCormick, our two advisors to the Student Council, everyone.
Good morning, Columbia High School community. We are pleased to commence this annual tradition by warmly welcoming you all to the 2023 CHS Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony. We are so honored, humbled, and grateful to celebrate with you all Columbia High School's past, present, and future.
Today, we have quite a special program planned for you. One that celebrates your predecessors, and one that celebrates you as Columbia High School Cougars. Today is a day to sit back, relax, and listen to the stories of two of our remarkable alumni who walked the halls of CHS before you. Today is a day to learn from their experiences. Today is a day to be inspired.
On our stage, we have Columbia High School Student Council Hall of Fame co-chairs, Stephen Alexander and Alexa Kaplan. And CHS Hall of Fame committee members, Kayla Anisette and Lily Elisevich. They are some of the student members who have worked tirelessly to make this day happen. Thank you.
Without further ado, we present to you Hall of Fame co-chairs, Stephen Alexander and Alexa Kaplan.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for the CHS 2023 Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
My name is Stephen Alexander, and I am one of the CHS Student Council Hall of Fame co-chairs, alongside Alexa Kaplan.
As we begin our program today, I would like to tell you a bit about the process of the CHS Hall of Fame. Each year, the Student Council will select inductees for the CHS Hall of Fame. The honorees will be chosen from past graduates of the school through either faculty suggestion or from student-generated interest.
The former graduates should be distinguished in their current fields of endeavor, be leaders in their professions, and be dedicated towards the betterment of society, so that true assessment of their importance can be made. Inductees should be at the peak of their careers. The designation shall be kept a secret, known only by the people involved in the selection process that year. And in the springtime, which is now, the honorees will be announced, and an all-school assembly will be held, which is what we're at.
During this celebration, we aim to honor the former students, induct them into the Hall of Fame, and allow them to speak to the students, and exhort the audience to also strive for excellence in their lives after CHS.
Hi. As we begin our program today, I would like to tell you a bit about the history of the CHS Hall of Fame. As many of you are aware, Columbia High School is a special place. Many CHS graduates have gone on and continue to go on to do great things in the world. From doctors to lawyers, activists, actors, athletes, artists, musicians, producers, designers, and the list goes on. In the mid-1980s, the CHS Hall of Fame Committee was established as a part of the Student Council to recognize the vast accomplishments of its graduates. In 1985, the Hall of Fame inducted its first two alumni, senior U.S. Circuit Judge Amalia Pierce and world-renowned actor Boy Scheider. Since then, every year the committee has inducted anywhere near from 1 to 4 former students who had demonstrated academic excellence during their time at CHS and have gone on to influence the world around them in positively meaningful ways. Before we honor this year's alumni, let's take one last look back.
Columbia High School, Maplewood, New Jersey, 07040. Dear students, society sees us how it wants to see us, in the simplest terms and in the most convenient definitions. We are seen as the brains, the athletes, the basket cases, the princesses, and the troublemakers. But that's not us. We're the journalists, the scientists,
in problem solving, one kind of problem doesn't mean you're good at solving another.
Of energy to keep a bee foraging. Even when working on flowers, flight bundles must be kept heated so that the bee can take off.
professional athletes, the Olympic medalists,
Don't you forget about me.
the lawmakers,
Don't you.
the entertainers,
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
You okay? Is everything all right?
Never love me. Rain keeps falling.
Done all this for me unless you wanted to get back together, am I right?
What are you doing here?
What if I told you I could deliver Tommy's entire organization, and I can do it without starting a war?
the artists,
If people are looking at The Daily Show as the only source of news out there, then that's a sad commentary on news.
It's like, what do you want to be? Are you going to be a fashion stylist? Are you going to be an interior designer? Are you going to be an art collector? And I like to be everything.
the authors, the musicians,
And on the drums, the mighty Max Weinberg. Don't you forget about me. I'll be alone, dancing, you know it, baby. Going to take you apart. I put us back together.
we are the doctors, veterans, educators, activists,
Forget about me.
the disruptors.
Don't you.
We are aware and we are changing the world. Sincerely yours, Columbia High School.
Retrospective created by CHS 2017 alumni and former TV production student Ben Kruger. Today we'll be adding 2 more alumni to the list as our 2023 inductees.
We know you'll enjoy hearing about their journeys through CHS and the legacies that they have created, and we hope that their stories will inspire you to one day become a part of this wonderful tradition with your own plaque in our Hall of Fame. Please enjoy this video clip looking back at a major accomplishment of our first inductee to be honored this morning, Ms. Hazel Clark, in her record-setting run at the women's 800-meter race at the 1998 NCAA Indoor Track and Field Championship.
Ready now for the women's 800 meters. The collegiate mark, 2 minutes, 2.05 seconds. A good field. Hazel Clark, the junior from Florida, is the younger sister of Joetta Clark, one of the all-time great American indoor runners.
The meet announcer here, Bob Kirsch, had an interesting tidbit on the woman in the lead. You're looking at Hazel Clark. He said if she's able to win today, the last victory by a Southeast Conference athlete at this event in these indoor championships was back in 1983, and it was Hazel Clark's sister Joetta that won back then. Over 50 members of her family, I think the figure was actually 16, of relatives and friends came to cheer Hazel on here in Indianapolis.
Her older brother is J.J. Clark, who coaches not only Joetta, but also Gerald Miles Clark, a terrific long sprinter,
who he married. And there you see they're coming up to the 400-meter mark, and Hazel has gotten now taken control. 59.94, very good, solid pace. I think she's the class of this field. The rest of the athletes are going to try and hold on here through what might be a difficult next 2 laps, Bob.
Running in second is Julian Reynolds from Georgetown. Shantae Earl from Pittsburgh. She and Reynolds, just sophomores, runs in third. But Clark, who led her heat race and won it from the front, once again showing a lot of courage and a lot of fitness as she leads the way here.
Look at this lead that she's opening up. Interestingly enough, at the age of 16, this woman in the lead said, I had just started into track when I was 16. Before that, I wanted to be my own person. I didn't want to follow in the footsteps of my sister Joetta, she said, and after falling on my face so many times in figure skating and finally cutting my face open, she said, I figured, why not try running? And this is the result.
Well, she's running the kind of race that her big sister made famous, and she becomes the first Southeastern Conference athlete since her sister to win the NCAA Women's 800. 2:02.53. That's the fastest time by a collegiate this year. We'll take a break and return with the men's 800 meters from the RCA Dome.
We would now like to invite to the microphone Mr. Len Clayton.
Thank you. Good mid-morning, Columbia High School students, faculty. I appreciate Hazel giving me this opportunity to introduce her. You just witnessed a film of her running expertise. But that's sort of the end or the beginning of this story, the way you want to look at it. But you saw and heard the name Joetta Clark, who is a legend also in the Hall of Fame. That's where the journey begins. And you heard it in the video. Hazel, also known as Peachy, was going to try every other sport possible besides running, because everyone has their own journey, and you don't know where you're going when you're young. And this is the story for all of you. Eventually, she realized that she's a runner also. She has to do what she thinks is best. Not worry about what other people think of her. Not worry about failure, because failure is only when you don't try. So her first 2 years of high school, she did not come to Columbia High School. Her junior year, she attended this school. Without much training, her first race And I don't know if you remember this, Hazel, we took you to Bernardsville and you went against the best 800-meter runner in New Jersey at the time. And she beat her by about a yard without training. This was a wake-up call. And as I said, this is the beginning of the story. Eventually, she had to learn how to train. Her sister was of one generation, and this goes to the history of the sport for you to understand. In 1975, there was no track and field team for women. That particular fall was the beginning of cross country for track and field for Columbia High School. Joetta Clark was part of that group in the late 70s. And that started a tradition for every decade. And all of you should know that when they say Columbia High School, not just in the state where you have won more state championships than any other school in the state, more county champions than any other school in the state, but you became nationally recognized. Each decade produced better and better runners. In the 80s, Lisa Morgan, who became coach in the beginning of the 2000s, was part of that group that won national champions. Ranked number 3 in the country as a team. In the 90s, you were also ranked, and that's where Hazel's story begins. She was a different generation of her sister. Her sister would get up at 6:30 in the morning, start a double workout. In her generation, they didn't get up in the morning at 6:30. They would train and do as much as they thought they should. One day, during the lunch hour, I was coming back to Columbia High School, and I witnessed a runner during the lunch hour doing a workout. And I did a double take. It was Hazel. And I said to myself, she's doing it her way. She doesn't have to get up at 6:30, but she finally understands the word preparation. To be the best you can be and to bring out what your talent has, you have to prepare. You have to see beyond the moment. And that's the story for all of you. If you're not getting there right away, see beyond the moment. What do you have to do to reach your goals? So from that point on, Hazel kept raising her level because she trained differently. And that comes to our senior year. The best 8 athletes in each event are asked to go to the Golden West. Now it's the Nike, they have all these shoe sponsors. There it was only the Golden West. We went out to California with the help of donations and the Columbia High School athletic staff. And there we were facing the top runners in the country. Hazel was not the favorite. I just gave her simple directions, do what you always do, sit on the lead or the favorite. But this is a story about Hazel. She had her own mind. She had confidence from her training. The gun went off. Hazel took the lead. I'm saying to myself, what is she doing? She knew what she was doing. She believed in herself. She believed in her preparation. She had confidence. By the time, as you know, in 800 meters, there's 2 laps. She was in the lead by 5 meters. Coming around the last turn, she was in the lead by 30 meters and won by over 30 meters, beating the best girl in the country. You heard the word journey. I repeat it again. This was the beginning of her journey. This took her to the University of Florida. This took her to be a 3-time Olympian, one of the best finishers in the final of any American in the 800 meters in the Olympics since Madeline Manning. The name doesn't mean anything to you, but she was the only Olympic champion we ever had until last year in the 80s. That's another, I guess, history lesson. The thing that you have to enjoy about her is that this led to her being a businesswoman, a mother, and all the lessons she learned from sport and everything she learned from Columbia High School is important for the people that followed her. That's what happened in the 2000s. That's why your program, you have a brand new coach. Your track and field team did very well in the county this year. It all has something to do with your past. You have to appreciate your high school and what it has meant to the people here now and in what it's meant to the people who came before you. Our daughters. Nance, can you raise your hand, please? You're sitting right next to Joetta. Joetta, can you raise your hand, please? Our daughters ran for this team. We have a history here. And this is another part of our history because it gives me the opportunity to introduce you to a legend in her own right. I give you Hazel Peachy Clark.
Wow. First of all, I just want to start by thanking all of the students in this room right now. I travel all over the world, and your vibe is amazing. You have made this so special. The hug, the round of applause, the high five, your attentiveness. I'm just so proud of you. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart for what you represent. So thank you for the energy and the warm welcome home. Also, the jazz ensemble, I said it in the last time that we spoke, and I'm going to say it again, you guys are amazing, seriously. Thanks for setting that vibe, grooving. I love it. I love to see it. On my way home, I was trying to think about what I should say to you, and you heard a little bit of my story. I really wanted to talk to you from the heart. I come from a family that has a pretty big legacy in New Jersey, in this nation. My father, Joe Clark, was the subject of the movie Lean on Me. Morgan Freeman played him in that movie, and he was on the cover of Time magazine. He carried a baseball bat around. That tells you everything you need to know. It was quite a situation. My older sister is, as you heard, a legend in track and field, an Olympian. My brother, a world-class coach, he's at Stanford University right now. He was a state and national champion. Then he married my sister-in-law, who's an Olympic gold medalist. So I used to look around the dinner table when I was your age and say, this is not a good situation. How am I going to measure up? And so I launched Operation Avoid Track and Field at All Costs. You just heard. I started with basketball, and Mama Wright luckily kind of steered me away and said, you're not that good, you're cut. So that helped me kind of find my way. I tried tennis. I was not Venus or Serena, I can tell you that. I tried equestrian, everything, and I landed on figure skating, which was a perfect sport for me. I got to wear a dress. It was far away from track and field. Nobody in my family had done it, so I had to be the best by default. And one day I went up for a jump. I came down face first, and I woke up in the hospital. I knocked myself unconscious, and I looked over at my father, and he came over to me. I waited for him to say, oh, honey, are you okay? And he said, I've had enough. You're running track. And that's how I started running track. So I kind of got pushed on the track. I remember him telling me, you have the talent. I know you have what it takes. I'm going to put you with Mr. Claypack. And if you do the work, you're going to do great things. He always believed in that. And when I think about that story, I'm sharing it with you because I was so close to missing my destiny, being an Olympian, being a Nike-sponsored athlete, traveling the world because I was scared. I had this fear of failure. I had this fear of not measuring up. I didn't understand that I didn't have to worry about the people next to me or who's in the lane next to me or what my sister or brother or father had done. I just had to be the best version of myself. And that took me a long time to realize, and I want all of you to realize that right now. I want you to be able to look yourself in the mirror and know that you've done your best. You've maximized your talent. You found your passion. And if you've done that, you've found success. Something else that I want to talk about, I talk about failure. Listen, you saw my highlight reel, one of my great races. There have been many where I haven't done what I wanted to do, or where I've been injured, or where I've been knocked down. And at the end of the day, one of your biggest superpowers, because you're going to get knocked down, you're going to have, those setbacks, and things aren't going to always go your way, but what's going to differentiate you is how you get back up. That's going to be your superpower. How you deal with failure, how you learn from it, and move forward and use it to make you better. And I want all of you to do that. Don't fear failure. There's not one successful person you'll ever find that where everything went smoothly, but at the end of the day, you have to learn from it and you have to get better, and that's what Cougars do, so I have confidence you'll do that. I want to share with you a quote that my father always said to me when I was nervous or I felt pressure. He would say, listen, a diamond is a piece of coal that thrived under pressure. We all have the opportunity to be diamonds, and when you have an opportunity in front of you or a moment, you've got to seize that moment and just use it as an opportunity to shine. Don't let that pressure get the best of you. Literally just get out there and make sure that you are the diamond that you are. I know this room is full of diamonds. Listen, look at your Hall of Fame at the school that you attend. That is not a normal Hall of Fame. That's an amazing Hall of Fame. I mean, I feel so honored to be a part of that and to sit here with Michael. And by the way, you're such a class act. I was so inspired by everything that you said. But I'm just honored to be around all of you and to be a part of this community, and it's a special community. And as I traveled the world, I found that we are really, really fortunate to be from South Orange, Maplewood, to go to a school like this and to have the support we have. So take advantage of it. And then finally, I want to really acknowledge some really special people that always show up for me, that are here in the room right now. You met Mr. Claypack, who I gave many gray hairs to, stressed him many times. I'm glad that we're on the other side now and that I'm able to work with him and that he's able to see that I made it. I know that he probably at times said, what am I going to do with this girl? But he's so special to me, as well as his wife, Mrs. Claypack. I talked about Mama Wright, who told me basketball is not your thing, honey. She's always there. When I touchdown, she texted me. She's just such an amazing person and just such a pillar of this community. Also, I have two friends in the audience who always show up, Reggie and April. And then talking about legacy, we talked about Coach Lisa Morgan and Coach Jason Jackson, who are such great friends of mine as well, that are here in the room and just really represent what this community means. They're so dedicated to you and to this community, and so thank you for being my friend and being there for me. And then finally, I cannot forget my sister. Listen, being the younger sister to Joetta, at one point, I thought it was a burden. It took me some time to understand that it's really probably been one of the biggest blessings in my life. She is the type of sister that shows up. She has never not been there for me. Our parents raised us to be there for each other, and I know that my father is looking down from heaven and so proud that she's here with me and able to support me, and that she set such an amazing foundation for me to follow, such an amazing example. My mother couldn't be here as well, but my parents were so dedicated, and everything that I am today is a testament to their support. So I want to acknowledge them, as well as my husband and daughter, who are in Bermuda. So Cougars, again, thank you for this warm welcome. Thank you for the love. Continue the legacy. Continue to shine. Make the world a better place. Reach out and help somebody else. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so honored to everyone that thought enough of me to be inducted into this amazing Hall of Fame. Thank you.
On behalf of the Columbia High School Hall of Fame Committee, we would like to present Ms. Hazel Clark with her plaque. Please enjoy this video clip of an interview from our second inductee to be honored today, Dr. Michael P. Jeffries, as it relates to his first published work, Painting the White House Flag, Barack Obama and the Meaning of Race in America.
All right, I'm here with Dr. Michael Jeffries, who's an associate professor of American Studies at Wellesley College. In addition, he's an author and lecturer on issues involving race, gender, and modern culture, I would guess. And so the first question I want to ask you is, how did you get interested in this, and why is it a career choice for you?
That's a good question, and I don't really know the answer. I think when I was in college, I went to a small school. I had a lot of access to the professors there, and I got to see their work as more than people who were just writing books and giving lectures, but I saw the sort of human side of being a professor. Mm-hmm. And when I was done with my undergraduate studies, I applied right to graduate school. I felt like the things I was interested in as an undergraduate, I wasn't quite done studying them yet, and I was fortunate enough to get into a PhD program. And the more I did it, the more I liked it. And African American studies in particular is such a rich field because it allows you to tackle these social issues and research questions from so many different angles. So if you're interested in the civil rights movement, right, you can look at that from the perspective of a historian. You can read memoirs and literature from that period. You can come at it from so many different ways that you'll never really tire of looking at the topics that are interested in you. So that's why I did it.
And I want to go right into some of the things that you have lectured about, and specifically about issues involving race and gender and equality. And I want to ask you about a couple of books that you've authored and sort of pick up the topic from there. You authored a book called Paint the White House Black, Barack Obama and the Meaning of Race in America. Can you give us an idea of what that book is about and why it's significant as it relates to race?
Yeah, well, so many of the books that are written about Barack Obama and the Obama family tend to focus on his biographical details because he has such a unique story and his memoir did so well. People want to learn the details of his life. But I tried to stay away from that as much as possible and figure out what broader lessons we can learn about race and racism from studying Barack and Michelle Obama and their rise to the White House. So I've got a chapter in there, for instance, on multiracial identity, right? And what does Barack Obama's candidacy and his presidency say to us about what it means to be biracial and multiracial in America? And for that chapter, I actually interviewed young students who identify as multiracial and biracial to get their perspective on the Obamas, right? That was one thing I did. Another issue that I looked at was Michelle Obama's rise and her career as a public figure. And she sits in a very different time historically than black women from other epochs because she's a black woman who has made it, right? And so many of the racist and sexist critiques that are thrown her way are based on the idea that because she went to Princeton, because she was a successful lawyer, because she sits in the White House, she no longer has anything to complain about. She doesn't have the right to criticize America. She doesn't have the right to bring up racism or sexism because she's supposed to be beyond that. So that's a case where when she's made these statements and stuck up for herself as a black woman and talked about her struggle to make it to where she is, she's received some sort of unfair criticism in that respect. And so I used the book to unpack those standards that she's held up to as a modern black woman.
One of the things that you have talked about is that race is a language. And I want to just touch on a term that seems to follow Barack Obama, and that is the word arrogant. You hear the word arrogant addressed with him, and I think there was a Google search that put arrogant and Obama together, and it just went off the charts. Can you sort of explain that in the context of what you mean by race?
Oh, no question. So let's start with the first part of that, right? Race is a language. And one of the reasons I use this idea is to get us to understand that there are so many terms that aren't supposed to have a racial meaning, but race is this language that's kind of operating above as an umbrella our other kind of linguistic habits and our other lexicon, our other vocabulary, and lending meaning to terms that are supposed to have no racial meaning at all. So when people say Obama is arrogant, for example, there's a kind of lineage that you can trace from arrogant to ideas like uppity, right, which was a derogatory term used for black folks in the middle of the 20th century and before then, right? And it was meant to connote the sense that black people were sort of reaching beyond their appropriate station in life, overreaching, feeling too entitled. So when we hear Barack Obama being described as arrogant, the word arrogant itself isn't a racial term. But because race operates like a meta-language and lends meanings to terms like arrogant, we know that is in fact a racist critique of the way he behaves and his position in American society.
Another interesting fact about you is that at Wellesley you teach a course on hip-hop. I'm not sure exactly what the title is, and of course hip-hop means a lot to different people, but one of the things when we talk about hip-hop is language. Tell me a little bit about the course and tell me a little bit about the book that you wrote, Thug Life, Race, Gender, and the Meaning of Hip Hop, and how that relates to the things that you're doing.
Yeah, the course is called Beats, Rhymes, and Life. It's an introduction to hip hop studies. And I started researching hip hop really for the same reasons that anyone would. I was just a huge hip hop fan. I grew up on it, and it was tremendously important to me in terms of, first of all, it was a way for me to process some of the things that were happening politically and socially to young black people in the country, and I was one at the time, right? I was 13, 14 years old when I was buying this music. So that was one piece of it. And then another piece of it was I was using it the way all young people use music. I was using it, if I was sad about something, I would listen to mournful music. If I was happy about something or getting ready to go out, I would listen to music that excited me to get me ready to go out. And the book is about that concept, right? That even though we know hip hop is subject to stereotypes and misconceptions, people think that it's music about crime, it's music about gangsterism, that it has no real positive social value. When you go out and talk to committed hip hop fans, you come to understand that they use it for so many more things than the stereotypes that we have about hip hop. And this applies for both black fans, who are most often to be assumed to be the kind of hardcore hip hop fans, and white fans who might also have a love for hip-hop but don't necessarily invest in some of the racial or social meanings of rap music. So it was a really fun project to do.
And interestingly enough, you now have a book about comedy. Tell us a little bit about that. And the title of that book is?
It's Behind the Laughs. And this is a book where I started out with the idea that I was going to go out and ask a bunch of comedians what they found funny and how they made their jokes. And I have to tell you, this is a terrible idea for a book. Don't ever do that. Because the minute you ask a comedian to explain why something is funny, the interview just goes right downhill. But in the course of having these failed conversations, I stumbled onto what were much more interesting questions that were less about the jokes themselves and more about the experiences of actually working in the comedy business. And those experiences were really fascinating. First, because one of the things I found is that they're really conscripted and limited by social class and gender and race. So as a very kind of basic point to illustrate this, you don't make any money early in your career as a comic. You're often expected to work late at night going to open mics, to take comedy classes at these improv and sketch comedy theaters, all these things that require a financial investment. If you're somebody who has a little money to fall back on from your family, if you're somebody who works a lucrative job and can take classes at night because you can pay for those classes with the money you make during the day, you have a much better chance of sticking around long enough and building your skill set. So by the time you're 28, 30, 5, 7 years in the business and making a little bit money from comedy, you have a viable shot to make it a career. But if you don't have any money to fall back on early on in your career, you might not be able to hang around long enough to make it to professional comedy. So that's one way in which the kind of path gets narrower and narrower just if you have access to financial capital.
Also, historically, especially for the African American community, comics have been political commentators.
Absolutely.
And I'm assuming that you incorporated that
Oh
in your
yes,
study.
and that was one of the reasons I started writing the book in the first place, is comedy is such an important form of social criticism and social critique. It's a way to speak truth to power and say things that we feel we should not say. That's one of the things that comedians do for us. They take that burden, right? We all think these thoughts, and comedians are unafraid to say them for us. That's why we celebrate them. That's one of the reasons we celebrate them. And for black comics who do that, there's a long tradition in black stand-up comedy, right? You think about Chris Rock and Richard Pryor and so on and so forth, of being that sort of ambassador for the community. And as a result, stand-up comedy, of all the forms of comedy, has been the one that's historically been most open to people of color, black people, certainly Hispanic people, and even Asian American people and people of the Asian diaspora today. So these different fields, improv and sketch and stand-up, all have their own particular kind of traditions and possibilities for people from different backgrounds.
And finally, I want to talk to you a little bit, because I don't want to say that you have been a spokesman for the Black Lives Matter movement, but it is a movement that is misunderstood by a lot of, especially conservative white Americans, as being sort of a anti-police, anti-government movement. Why have you been such an advocate for the Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, and I don't want to inflate my standing either, because I'm not one of the organizers who's organizing Black Lives Matter actions. I have no formal affiliation. But I am a scholar and I am an advocate of the movement. I've written about it in all kinds of places. I think one of the things that we've got to understand about Black Lives Matter is that in many respects the tactics they're using and the organizational strategies they're employing are not new, and the criticisms that are being directed against them are not new either, right? The fact that public opinion was so heavily against them, especially when they started, we can see clear parallels to the way public opinion was directed against the leaders of the civil rights movement in the middle of the 20th century. So they're really building on a model that's been there for a long time. One of the things that's especially interesting, though, about Black Lives Matter is it's a youth movement, and it's horizontally organized. And what I mean by that is it's been resistant purposefully to the idea that they have singular leaders who are spokespeople for the whole movement. Now, one of the things that does is it opens them up to this criticism that they're not politically sophisticated enough, they're not serious enough, because they don't have these singular spokespeople who dress up in the suits and go on television and enter into these debates with established political figures. That's not the model of political leadership they believe in. They believe in empowering a whole bunch of different leaders, reconceptualizing leadership as something that's organized horizontally and not vertically. And for that reason, people say they're disorganized, they don't have a real political program, but all of that's nonsense. If you look at the things that they've produced, they've been very, very clear about what their goals are and about their investment in American democracy, right? This notion that all they want to do is complain and not really engage with politicians, it's just historically untrue. You look at the way they engage with Democratic candidates during the primaries. You look at some of the efforts they've made to get involved in electoral politics. Up until today, they're still involved in registering voters and things of that nature. So these are people who are actually quite invested so much in democracy, but they're sort of painted in the opposite way. I think it's a mistake.
And finally, how did Charlottesville happen? In light of this post-racial America that we had hoped for after the Obama election, both elections. As briefly, what's your thoughts there, and what's your thoughts about the future?
I think one of the things that we have to notice, and that to his credit, Obama was quite clear about from the very beginning, is that we had never even approached post-racial America. Obama has sort of made that clear, despite the fact that people wanted to call the country that. He was clear that we were never there. Charlottesville in particular is a very interesting case because we've seen hate groups emboldened in the past year or 2 years as a result of some of the rhetoric of the recent Trump campaign and to some extent the presidency. So they've felt emboldened to step up their activity and their actions. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the actual number of people who subscribe to these ideologies has increased, but they've felt less of a sanction, less of a penalty for expressing it in public. So I think that contributed in particular to Charlottesville to a mood where they felt emboldened to speak out of turn and to conduct themselves really irresponsibly and violently, right? I mean, people were charged with assault. A woman was killed by someone driving their car into the protester. So it's created an atmosphere of discontent, and it's emboldened people who feel like speaking out and using hate speech is suddenly okay. And I think the key is, right, that we've got to understand the costs of that. And they're not just costs in terms of the way we talk to each other, it's costing people their lives. It really is a public safety matter. And hopefully police and law enforcement and government officials will recognize the real physical danger that these kinds of rallies pose, more than just the expression of ideas. People were assaulted, and I think that's where the priority needs to be.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jeffries, and thanks for your work. And what are you working on now? Other than, I know you have the comedy book, but is there anything else that you're going to be working on or do you find interesting coming up?
I'm doing a few things here and there. One of the things that's worth looking out for is the Kerner Commission issued a report in the 1960s, and it's going to be its 50th anniversary of that report on urban violence and black suffering. And I'm part of a group that was commissioned to produce some research for an anthology on that. That book is going to be released early next year, and I'm really, really excited about that work. It's a tremendous honor to be tapped for that. And the volume that we've produced, I think, is so important in terms of the history and what we're facing today.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We
morning, everyone. I'm David Jeffries, as was introduced. I'm also from the class of 2001, and I'm so happy to have the honor today to introduce my brother, Michael, and your newest inductee to Columbia High School's Hall of Fame. Before I share just a few of Michael's many accomplishments, I'd like to punctuate his successes with a quick story that I think expresses the kind of person Michael is. Around 27 years ago, I would have been in middle school. Michael would have already been a student here at Columbia. Now, back in those days, the spare key to our house was often left to me because I was often home first after school. But on a particular spring day, I'd completely forgotten my key at home. Calm and rational kid that I was, I naturally decided that this was the end of the world. I just could have been so much more responsible. How would we ever get inside? We were gonna have to wait for our parents to get home that evening. My brother walked up to our house about 30 minutes later, and through tears I began explaining how I had locked us out. Rather than yell, Michael looked around, stared at my bedroom window, and said with focus, "Can you get up there?" A few minutes later, we're waist deep in our front yard's bushes. Michael gives me his knee, then his hands, then his shoulders. Standing on top of him, I somehow got my bedroom window open from the outside, pushed through the screen, and flew in head first to our parents' house. We both cheered, and Michael told me throughout my ascent and as I barreled through the window to our house that I was awesome. Rather than make me feel irresponsible, he made me feel like I had been part of some shared success. And it turned out to be a pretty good day, which I think really speaks to what Michael's character is about. Panic does not come easily to Michael Jeffries. He assesses risk, calculates success rates, gets moving, but also brings you along for the ride. He understands that we succeed when we work together, and he elevates the people around him. Through his teaching, scholarship, and commitment to social justice, I am confident in saying we all stand on Michael's shoulders. Less than 5 years earlier from that day of that particular lockout, Michael had moved from Brooklyn to South Orange. Less than 5 years later from that same day, he would graduate Columbia High School with the class of 1998, leaving this community as a beloved son, brother, friend, boyfriend, teammate of Columbia's baseball and basketball squads, and perhaps most importantly, a reigning CHS volleyball tournament champion with some of his best friends. He was bound for Swarthmore College in the fall of '98, and Michael will quip that Swarthmore is where he played varsity basketball on one of the worst teams in all of Division III athletics. But it's also where he began to soar as an academic. So much so that when he graduated college in the spring of 2002 with high honors in both sociology and black studies, he held the rare distinction of being accepted and directly enrolling at Harvard University's PhD program in African American Studies. After graduating with his doctorate in 2008, he began his career at Wellesley College, which remains his professional home to this day. At Wellesley, he has been unyieldingly devoted to educating and guiding tomorrow's leaders. Over the last 15 years, Michael has authored 4 academic books, published over 40 essays and works of criticism in the New York Times, The Atlantic, The Guardian, and the Boston Globe, and he has been interviewed by the Washington Post, the New York Times, NPR, and several other outlets. He continues to also serve as a regular contributor at the New York Times Book Review and Boston's public broadcasting station, WGBH, for both television and radio programming. He has been invited as a guest lecturer at dozens of sites, universities, institutes across the country. And in 2020, Michael welcomed and moderated a discussion with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and MacArthur Fellow Nicole Hannah-Jones to speak with the Wellesley community about the legacy of slavery in the United States and the need for racial justice today. Michael's rigorous scholarship was foretold by his mentors, remains celebrated by his colleagues, and is now sought after by the masses. His writings and teachings augment the fields of sociology, black studies, and American studies across our country's finest institutions, and he is just getting started. Although he began his professional career as assistant professor 15 years ago, Michael comes to us today as the Dean of Academic Affairs, class of 1949 professor in ethics, and professor of American Studies at Wellesley College. If you ask him, I suspect he will list among the titles he is most proud of as coach of the Natick Eagles and Natick Hawks, devoted husband to fellow CHS alum Sarah Stile, father to my fantastic niece and fantastic nephew Kira and Alex. In late April, Mike texted me that he was going to be inducted here into the Hall of Fame, confessing in joyful earnest that he had no idea why he was being chosen. I remember laughing because Michael being recognized for all that he has done and his subsequent gracious disbelief encapsulates two things that you will always receive when in the presence of my brother. One, the undeniability of his excellence, and two, his relentless and instructive humility. I ask you all now, with the aid of your applause, to help me show him why he is here today and warmly welcome your newest 2023 Hall of Fame inductee, father, husband, son, sociologist, public intellectual, professor, dean, and my big brother, Dr. Michael Philip Jeffries.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Dave. Dave is the former student council president at Columbia High School, so a little round of applause for Dave. That's hard work. That's hard work. I want to start just by thanking everybody who made today possible, the entire committee, my parents, John and Emily, my wife, Sarah, and our kids, Kira and Alex, all my friends and family who continue to support me, the teachers, the faculty and staff at CHS. This is a community that we are so proud to be a part of. We're deeply invested in South Orange, Maplewood, and Columbia. I've had cousins come through here. One of them is here today. All three of us, Jeffries' kids, went here. My dad taught here for a little while. This is such a great privilege for me. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about my time at Columbia, and then a little bit about my time after. I'll just paint sort of a hazy picture of me in 9th grade for you, to give you a sense. I was about 5'0", 100 and nothing. Had a small afro, no shape up. Fuji's album, no skips. I had friends, but no special friend. I had a Patrick Ewing jersey, but no Knicks championships. So all of this is to say that I was kind of an ordinary kid. There were dozens of people who might have fit that description who walked through the halls that way in 9th grade. And when I got here, I really don't remember my high school career as being punctuated by any of the highlights that Hazel achieved. And Hazel, it's such an honor to stand up here with you today. I want to give us a chance to honor her one more time because I think it's important to recognize what a standard of excellence she set with her team here at Columbia. This was a standard that we all looked up to at the time. But we may not have all reached that same standard of excellence, and that was okay. It was okay to excel in the classroom. It was okay to be a little sometimey in the classroom. We felt, and I felt, that my time at Columbia was pretty ordinary. And when I left here, I didn't leave here with a plan for my life. I didn't leave here with a predetermined career path. I left here with great friendships, decency, common sense, a little bit of confidence, and the sense that I had some time to figure it out. And that is one of my biggest wishes for you all, that you give yourself some time and some grace, because the truth is, you do have that time to figure things out. So please enjoy it. I went to college and I picked the classes I was interested in, and eventually I went to graduate school and began taking myself a little bit more seriously as a writer and as a potential professor. And in graduate school, I really had to make the first important choice in my professional career. And I had to choose what I wanted to write my dissertation on. Your dissertation is the huge paper that you write at the end of your PhD that gets you the PhD. And I was choosing between writing about rap music, which was a topic that was so close to my heart that I really felt in my bones, and something else. Something that might have pleased maybe my professors a little bit more, something was a little bit more traditional for a sociologist to write about. And it was the best decision I made to write about that thing that was closest to me. Because no matter how much you love that thing, there are going to be some bumps and bruises along the way getting to completion. And if I hadn't picked the thing that I loved, I don't know if I would have had the motivation to finish, and I definitely don't know if I would have had the confidence to think of myself as an expert. So I think that's the first thing I want to pass on is, when you have that choice, especially if you're someone who wants to work in a creative space, whether that creative space is writing, or dance, or music, or some other form of art, don't do the thing to please the folk who trained you. You need their training, you need their advice to get you where you want to go. But when it comes to making that choice about how you're going to define yourself, go with what's in your heart. That's the first thing. And then second thing, I think I just want to echo some of what we've already heard today, which is that you can have the talent, and you can even have a great deal of knowledge about that thing that you're so passionate about, but you also need some practice and preparation to reach your goals. And the really fortunate thing about that need for practice and preparation, especially at the age that you all are, is there are so many adults who are here to help you. It's an incredible just stroke of luck that you're at the time in your lives that you are, because you're going to encounter in this building and the educational institutions that you belong to so many grown folk who really want the best for you. So don't be afraid to reach out to them and ask for help, because that's what they are here for. The last thing I want to talk to you about is a little bit about where we are as a country and where I am in my career. And I mentioned the willingness to continue to learn even once you think you know a little bit. And I think I've had to learn some hard lessons about this country in recent years. Lessons about cruelty and misinformation in politics. And how important it is to keep telling the truth even when truth-telling is difficult. And I don't think anything captures the vitality, the importance of this idea, like the current sort of rash of book banning that we're seeing across the country in states like Tennessee and Florida and in other places. As an author, this offends me deeply, and I know that it offends you too. And Governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, talked about this trend of book banning recently at a commencement address at Morehouse. And he said something that I really want us to kind of digest and understand. He explained it as this. He said book banning and erasing history is not just about trying to create a new historical record or a new image of the country. What they're doing, especially when they're banning books about Black history and the history of people of color, especially when they're banning books about LGBTQ history, when they're banning books about women's history, what they're doing is they are trying to hide your power from you. Because those books are about history that you made, right? And they think that if they can somehow keep that history from you, you will think of yourself as someone who can't make a difference, right? Because there won't be a historical, there won't be any evidence of you already having made a difference. When the reality is, every time this country has taken a small step toward decency and justice, it's because we have dragged it in that direction. So in a time of big lies, the biggest lie is the lie they really need you to believe. It's the lie that you're powerless. Right? The truth of the matter is that you are the difference makers. Nobody knows this like those of us who work in education, whether it's higher ed, high school, elementary ed, whether we're professors, teachers, writers, counselors, coaches. We are pouring all that we can into you because we know how powerful you are. We know that you are the change makers. It is an act of faith. We believe in you. And you pay off that belief, and you make us so proud. I'm proud to be back home with you today. Thank you for having me.
Columbia High School Hall of Fame Committee, we would like to present Dr. Michael Jeffries Plaque.
We hope that you've enjoyed today's annual Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and that it leads you to reflect, to strive for more, and to leave this program inspired.
And we just have quite a few people we want to thank, because this was a community effort, this was a team effort, and like my colleagues say, teamwork makes the dream work, it really does. So we want to thank the CHS Hall of Fame student and committee members, student and teacher members, Mr. Ken Piglia and CCN, Ms. Mina and the stage crew, Mr. Bauer and the jazz band, CHS alumni Ben Kruger, IT staff, custodial staff, Somea President Senora Lopez, CHS administrators, Mr. Calvas, Mr. Porfido, Mr. Sanchez, our previous Hall of Fame advisors and members, Ms. Anna Elman, Ms. Carol Petralia, for their ongoing support of Hall of Fame. And of course, this year's Hall of Fame inductees, Ms. Hazel Clark and Dr. Michael P. Jeffries. Let's give it up for them. Go Cougars!